Hello and welcome to another episode of The Heart of CX. I'm Joanna Palmer and with me is my co-host Max Ball. Good morning, Max. I see you've brought another guest.
I did. I have brought a guest and I'm excited. We have Ann Slough today. Uh, now that I'm an analyst at Forrester, I get to meet more analysts at Forrester, and they're just all kinds of cool, interesting people with cool, interesting stories. And she and I were talking about the contact center, and she has a long, long history in the contact center. And she brought up something really interesting, which is one of the things she's been observing. She kind of watches over sales operations. And one of the things she's been witnessing is the contact centerification of some of the sales tools offerings. So we just thought it would be great to get Ann here and start talking with her. Ann, I'm going to start. Just why don't you give it? I totally butchered your background there. Maybe you can give a little better sense of that, and then we'll just kind of get into the conversation.
Yeah, Max, thanks. And Joanna, thanks for having me as well. I appreciate it. So, so I was sharing with you all prior to this session that, I've really been in contact center since 1996. And I was brought in to create a sales culture in a contact center. So my entire career since then has spanned all things sales. So sales operations, sales enablement, sales leadership, sales culture, sales talent, and contact centers. I've kind of carried contact centers with me wherever I've been because I have such a passion for not just the environment itself, because I think that really contact centers allow organizations to live their brand promise at every touch point, right? And so I think when you work in a contact center, you learn so much more about the organization than any other role because you're exposed to every aspect of an organization, but also the people within that environment. It can be a very stressful environment. And I think that they are the face of an organization and we don't always treat them that way. And so I have a deep passion for the people inside the organization as well. So I've carried them with me throughout my career. And I've been at Forrester for about a year and a half and the sales operations team as an analyst. And because of COVID, I joined in April of 2020. I thought it'd be a great idea to switch jobs at the height of COVID, height of a pandemic.
Perfect.
Yeah, perfect timing. Yeah. And so what I noticed is that because everyone was at home, sales organizations started saying, well, we can't do ride-alongs with our sales reps anymore. We're not going to the client site. So how do we have insight into what our sales teams are doing, the conversations they're having? How do I coach them? And so lo and behold, a technology called conversation intelligence really hit the market. And this was like earth-shattering to the sales world. And I sat back and thought, we've been doing this for 30 years in the contact center. We've been monitoring every interaction you have via chat, through the IVR, email, voice, every interaction. We know what you're doing every second of the day. In fact, so much so that that's what we have to put boundaries around, right, as leadership teams, so that we don't burn people out and make them feel like Big Brother's coming. So anyways, I started seeing this parallel and thought, what can sales learn from the contact center world by implementing this technology so we don't make the same mistakes, right? What are the best practices we can carry over?
Oh, I love this. I love this topic. And it's so timely, Ann. I just spent time in a contact center last week observing a sales team leveraging contact center technology to make those outbound calls. So really interested in discussing some of those best practices with you and what you've learned along the way.
Yeah, great. Well, I think, and the other thing I think is interesting, Joanna and Max, around this is, we've got four main generations working together now, right? So baby boomers, Gen X, Gen Y, and just beginning Gen Z to come into the workforce. Mm-hmm. And what I notice in the sales world, and I would love to hear from you all since you're closer to the contact center world than I am, is, for Gen Y and Gen Z, this kind of insight, I'm going to call it, through technology, isn't a big deal to them. They're digitally native. Their whole lives have been spent with everyone knowing everything they're doing. In fact, they want you to know that, the transparency. So when we look at these younger sales teams, they seem to crave it. Give me this feedback. I'm fine with you knowing this. What are the insights? What can I learn? Where Gen X and the baby boomers are more resistant to, I'm not sure I want you 24/7 knowing what I'm doing.
Yes, yes, absolutely. And what I saw was there's that generational piece, and then there is the longevity of the sales rep within the organization itself. So
Mm-hmm.
those that have had autonomy for so long and
Mm-hmm.
haven't really had the check-ins that we're seeing now today, or the structure that we're seeing now today, they are more resistant to change than those that are newer to the organizations, that aren't used to going out to the on-site customer visits, but this is what they only know. And so as I think about customer experience and employee experience, one of the things I found useful is creating those employee personas and journey mapping an employee experience, just like we have been for so long with the customer experience, creating those customer personas and mapping those journeys. What are your thoughts on that, Anne?
Yeah, I think that is really important, so people can kind of see the path, and the why and the how and the what. And the other thing I've noticed in these younger generations, which I love, is they need to know the why. They need to understand the purpose and the why. Where like for me, a boss could just say, "Go do it," and I'm like, okay, because that was kind of generationally how we were organized. But not so with Gen Y and Gen Z. They need to feel connected to the purpose. They need to feel connected and understand the how and the what and the why. And I think those journey maps by persona, like we've done for the customer, are really important. And the other thing we talk about is, in sales at least, are insight driven. Here at Forrester, one of our main perspectives around sales is to be successful in sales nowadays, it's not going to be the maverick. It's not going to be, let me just add more salespeople and I'll hit my number. But really, it's using data and the insights you glean from that data to inform your business decisions so that you're working smarter, not harder, right? And you're more efficient and more productive. And I think the insights that we get in the contact center and the way that we frame them in a balanced scorecard, for example. So you have qualitative and quantitative measurements, I think will be applicable to the sales world as well. So what I find with all this technology is we generate all this data and then we give it to the frontline manager and we tell him or her, okay, now go coach. And they're thinking, I don't know what to do with this. And I think what we do in the contact center really well is we say, here's your balanced scorecard. Here are your KPIs. Here's how you use this data. I used to teach a whole course in the contact centers about you have all these reports, now what? Like, where should your eye be drawn? What metrics should you be looking at and coach to? And I wish we could take some of those best practices from the contact center world and the metrics and coaching and send it to sales.
Yes, absolutely. There's a ton you just shared there, and I want to unpack some of it. So the first is the younger generations needing to understand the whys associated with what you're doing. Thinking about myself as that leader, as that manager, and managing the various different personas, I took the questioning of the processes a little bit as questioning of, why are you telling me to do this? And I think it's important as a manager to really understand your personas. So you understand really that communication that you need to tailor for each one of those, thinking back to situational leadership, where each individual person and where they are on the spectrum of their development requires different communication. And now we're making that a little bit more complex, layering on the needs of the generation along with their developmental needs to really tailor that conversation so you're a more effective manager. I think there's a lot there from a development perspective for those line level managers to really understand those nuances so that they're more effective when communicating to the various different employees on their team.
Mm-hmm.
And then leveraging the data within the contact center, within the sales organization. It's such an exciting time. When you think about all of the data, when you think about the conversations that have traditionally been unstructured, uncaptured, in the sales organization. And now you're able to capture those. You're able to apply analytics. You're able to really make correlations between what's resonating with your prospects, what's driving additional sales versus what's not resonating, what's resulting in no decisions or no sale. So when you start taking a look at all of those additional data points from a scorecard perspective, how do you even get started there to determine what metrics to put on the scorecard and how to really mine the data when it comes to a sales organization?
Yeah, well, I think this is a great question, Joanna, because I think as we work with sales leaders, this is the question they always ask too, and everyone defaults to, revenue and margin, or quota as an individual sales rep. What's my quota, and do I hit it or not? And what I always encourage sales leaders to do, and also in the contact center, I think is applicable, is to back up and say, what are our goals and how we go to market, right? So if we're a startup company, for example, depending on where you are on the maturity continuum, it is revenue because you're just trying to get as many acquisition as is the name of the game, right? Acquire, grow your revenue base. But if you were more of a high growth, you moved out of startup, you're in high growth, you're not quite in a maturity yet. Now you're talking about retention and acquisition opportunities, right? And so you may be moving from revenue to margin, or maybe you've decided I have one widget, but now I have 3 widgets. And so I want my salespeople to sell the other 2 more than, one's going to keep the lights on, but we're going to start moving into different verticals and different markets and different products. So now I may be incenting on product mix or, profitability of that product versus just pure revenue. And so I think as we step back and think about what is our why as an organization, what are we really trying to do? How are we trying to go to market? What's our sales strategy? Similarly, in the contact center, what are our goals there? Is it customer retention? Do we have a sales goal? And start with these no more than really 3 to 5. I prefer 3 big metrics, and then kind of cascade down. So what does that mean at the individual level? One of the things that I try to work on the contact center, and I also in sales, is having the individual be a student of the business so that he or she understands what is it that I do every day in my role that impacts the overall success of the organization versus just living in a silo and not seeing how you're connected to the larger self around you, right? So I think those kinds of things, to step back and think about that first, and then it's easy to figure out, well, what metrics measure that, right? If that makes sense.
A couple things really strike me on that. One is how well that last thing you said ties to what Gen Z and Gen Y want. Mm-hmm. Tell me why. And what's important, what you're saying is what's important is understanding the why behind everything you're doing. So there's a beautiful bit of synergy there. The other thing I'm kind of curious about, this is a whole new set of measurements for sales and measurement at a different level. But on the other hand, sales has always been about measurement. You kind of referred to that a little bit. It's making your quota, et cetera. So how does that play into acceptance around all these sorts of changes?
Yeah, I think, and I'm kind of a why person myself. So even 30 years ago, I related to this, once I get the why, I'm all in. And I think that it's okay for us to be measured in a more micro fashion if we have that connection to the why, because then we start to see data and insights as enabling us to get better versus you using that against me, right? And I think a lot of times in the contact center and in sales, data and insights are weaponized. They're not positioned as, how do we help the rep get better? It's more positioned as, I need this as management CRM, filled out every day accurately versus, and salespeople go, I don't want to do that stuff because I don't understand how it helps me get better. Contact center reps, the same kind of, resistance, I think, to that micro managing. So I think that helps the data and insights be an enabler versus an inhibitor, and really equipping them versus criticizing them.
And I think we can take that even one step further in terms of ensuring that the management team ties their coaching to the why, to really step back and say, am I micromanaging
Mhm.
or am I contributing to the overall objectives of this organization and this department? And I think that helps tremendously so that we don't get into some of the situations we saw in the 90s and the early 2000s with the
Mhm.
contact center in terms of just that micromanaging of here's the script you have to abide by when you're talking to the customer.
And I think too, Joanna, what'll be interesting is, and we were talking about travel before, before our call, and as salespeople start to travel again and they're able to see their clients and prospects again, it'll be interesting for me to see how this technology sticks or not. Does it
Yeah.
continue to grow and proliferate in sales or not because we're able to get back in the field? So I think it's really smart right now for sales leaders to show the value of this technology now so that they can continue to use it and have success with it, even when sales reps are traveling and they don't have to have that kind of visibility.
And I think we
So
also have to question what is the right mix of travel versus remote? Are we
Mm-hmm.
going to be traveling as much as we did
Yeah.
previously, or is it going to be more remote? We've seen how much more productive we can be being remote
Mm-hmm.
and layering on multiple meetings in a day versus having those in-person meetings, and the travel between the customer sites is creating sales drag.
Yeah, it is interesting. I was having this, I won't call it a debate. I would say healthy discussion with someone in Forrester as well about travel. And what I've learned about the American public, myself included, is we have really short memories. And so I don't think we'll ever go back to the same levels as before the pandemic because we have seen these efficiency gains. And also it's a better work-life balance, right? That I can not be traveling on the road and kind of that road warrior burn me out. And I think that we've learned we crave human interaction and in-person interaction and how much we appreciate that. And so what I think will happen is we'll just be smarter about where we spend our travel dollars and with whom so that they're more effective and they're more critical versus, hey, I feel like going to New York for this one meeting. I'm going to try to add 4 more meetings to make it worth my while. I don't think that's going to happen as much.
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes
Yeah. Well, the one other quick thing I wanted to just throw in that I'm super excited about from the contact center to sales is
Mhm.
AI and
Yes.
all of the technology around artificial intelligence. And what I think is fascinating in the contact center that's starting to come into sales is around sentiment and intent and personalization so that you're matching the right rep in the contact center with the right customer based on if they sound like they're from the South, like I am. Maybe you match me with another rep from the South. Or if I sound angry, maybe you match me with a rep who's particularly adept at handling and diffusing, customers not as excited about us as other customers. And that's starting to make its way into chatbots and virtual assistants in the sales world. And so I would love to hear your thoughts on that because I think it's really exciting technology that's going to impact sales as well.
Yeah, definitely. And super excited about all of the various different applications where AI can come into play. The predictive behavioral routing
Mm-hmm.
certainly is one of those key components, and matching just provides you with a competitive edge that a lot of companies aren't leveraging right now. The other piece, emotion detection, is so
Yes.
critical, not just for routing, but also for that sales conversation and having the real-time coaching for those sales reps where we've got technology now that can detect sentiment in real time and provide that real-time coaching is only going to enable those reps to be more effective, to drive more sales, to close more business in the long run. So it is a super exciting time to be here. And going back to what we were talking about in terms of in person versus virtual, these
Mm-hmm.
tools are we're able to apply them virtually very well. And it's almost like the man behind the curtain. Don't pay attention to the man behind the curtain. But the wizard is helping with all of this. And so as we start moving to those in-person meetings, yes, there is tremendous value in human connection and seeing each other face to face. But would you pull up your tools and see your real-time coaching take place of, it sounds like this person's getting a little frustrated with you. So,
Joanna, I think we should be talking about this product now. What do you think?
so there is that balance. It's going to be super interesting to see what happens over the course of the next 6 to 12 months as travel has picked up tremendously. So, I am very, very anxious to see what happens in that arena.
And I think the whole coaching next best action in the moment stuff and goes back to, again, I don't want it to be a nanny state. I want to feel like this is helpful to me. And if I'm monitoring you so I can give you a good tip and you're going to sell more, what rep isn't going to be like, sign me up today, right?
Right.
So to the extent, and how easy is it going to be to get that right is kind of interesting.
Yeah, I think totally agree with you, Max. And I think one of the main answers to that is around how well we actually equip our coaches to coach. And people ask for 30 years, customers have asked me, they want this magic bullet, right? This, like I'm not telling them something, I'm holding it in, this big secret about how to increase performance. And I want to say, you have to actually just do it. There's no magic bullet to coaching other than you have to do it. You have to equip your frontline managers. And those are the folks that are really in between the gap, that stand in the gap of organizational success. You've got to equip them to be good coaches. You've got to teach them how to look at data and glean insights around performance and coach in a way that impacts performance. And there's no technology, there's no magic bullet for that other than they have to just do it. Now, technology and process enable that, but they have to. When I remember when I was leading a contact center, I would schedule all of my call monitoring sessions and coaching sessions for the entire year on my calendar. And then everything else would fall in between that, right, for the year, because that was the most important thing to me, was making certain that I did that. So until we have that kind of discipline and cadence, all the technology and processes in the world are not going to solve that problem.
So true. Yeah.
So
That's
true.
spot on.
Yeah. I always tell people, I say, it's kind of like I have a trainer and he tells me what to do and he tells me what to eat, and I have a gym membership so I can lose my 20 pounds. But if I don't actually go do that, I'm never going to lose the 20 pounds, right? All the tools, all the knowledge, but if I don't actually just go do it, therein lies the problem.
Yes. And 100% agree with you. Technology can provide so much insight, so much benefit, and can be an enabler, but it really comes down to your people and the adoption and driving that adoption day in and day out.
And as we say about technology, it only enables bad process. If your processes are bad, it's just going to enable a bad process, right?
Right. You're going to have a very efficient bad process.
Yeah. And in sales operations, like contact centers, we love technology, right? That's the shiny object. We want to get all the new technology. Like that's what we're going to spend all of our time, because people are messy and processes take a lot of time to, figure out. And so we get drawn to technology. And it's just another similarity I see between sales operations and contact centers. We love technology.
Yes, absolutely. And thinking about the future of organizations overall, and thinking just about bad processes, technology can enable bad processes. I'm really thinking of a group within organizations that is marrying up the data and analyzing the processes and ensuring that process optimization along with technology optimization gets married up together. And this new group that would focus on both really becomes those experts of how to leverage the technology more effectively. And I'm wondering what role like data scientists play within this group, as well as organizational psychology and what that looks like overall. So certainly very interesting once you start looking well beyond the near term and what that looks like for business organizations.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. We talk a lot about centers of excellence. So in the sales world, we think about, do you need a data center of excellence, right? Or we talk about revenue operations, and there's a lot of debate around what does revenue operations mean? Is it sales, marketing, customer success? And the contact center has a big role to play in this, right? In the customer success world, what does that revenue engine look like? What does revenue operations mean? How does it impact me? Who owns the data? I mean, these are big questions right now in the business world. And again, that's why I see between sales operations and contact centers a lot of parallels and similarities.
And that's a great point, Anne, because going back to something you had mentioned earlier in this, in terms of where you are in your maturity within the organization, whether your sales team is focused on driving revenue or a combination of driving revenue and driving retention, once you get into that mix of revenue retention, the walls between sales and customer in contact center have to be torn down in order to ensure that revenue retention go hand in hand. What do you have any thoughts on what that organization looks like from a future state?
Well, Joanna, if I had this answer, I would be a bazillionaire right now, and I would be on the speaking circuit for everybody. But I can't say, because this is the big debate, right? Even internally at Forrester, as we go to market with our points of view so we can help our customers, we're wrestling with this as well. And I would say, just at a very high level, when I used to do consulting work with executive teams and they were trying to figure out how can we get aligned, right? What I have learned in that process is that we have to have shared metrics. So let me give you an example. Right now, the silo is sales owns revenue, marketing is kind of gen demand, right? And customer success is renewal, maybe some retention, but they don't really want to sign up for a number, right? Like sales does.
Right.
So my provocative suggestion would be that we all have a piece of the revenue number, or however we measure the organization. If it's profitability, if it's portfolio mix, if it's revenue, whatever those metrics are. Is it customer retention, customer sat? And all of us, marketing, sales, and customer success, own a piece of that number. And then what we do is we figure out, so based on that number, how do I contribute to it? And we have these shared interdependencies and goals and shared interdependencies and process. And that's the only way I know to get humans to all row in the same direction.
That solves something that really you kind of very indirectly alluded to in the beginning. You kept doing the sales thing and you kept bringing contact center with you.
Yeah.
And you had to bring contact center with you because contact center is a cost center. So the love that they're going to get from upper management is much more limited and much more, how do you improve your performance? But if they do sign up for a number, if they are seen as an integral part of generating revenue, then you can justify so much more of an investment there than you could otherwise.
And that was really what I was tasked with, Max, is making contact centers profit centers, moving them from a cost center to a profit center. Now there's a lot of, it's very complicated to do that for many reasons. That is a whole nother podcast. But I would say in general, as we think about, there are 4 opportunity types that we talk about, right? Acquisition, retention, cross-sell, and upsell. And so we think about what can contact centers own. So they may not fully be a profit center, but they can share in the number, right? So what I hear, just as a small example, a lot of salespeople are hunters. And once they close it, they move on. But in order to renew that opportunity, customer success contact centers has to do their part. So if they shared in the goal, the salesperson would be more incented to not just dump off the closed sale for customer success to implement, but they would stay the quarterback, right? They would facilitate the process. They would be certain they were sharing information with customer success. We would have a single pane of glass where customer success and sales and marketing could see the customer relationship all with the same information, not one designed for customer success and one view for sales, and which is what we have now.
Yeah. Yep. And even thinking about those shared metrics. So the shared metric of revenue certainly makes sense for customer success to own some of that. But likewise, I think it makes sense for the entire organization, not just to own the revenue number, but also own the retention number and retention percentage, so that you've got this organization that's not just focused on driving sales, but also driving loyalty and
Yeah, couldn't agree
satisfaction.
more. I mean, it's
Yeah,
hard.
that's
It's
huge.
super complicated. And I don't want people to hear this and think that we've lost our minds and we live in Pollyanna world. I mean,
Yeah.
I know I've been in sales my entire life. I've been a sales leader. I've carried a bag my entire life until Forrester, right? I understand how salespeople are motivated, how we're incented, how we're measured. I understand customer success. I understand marketing. It's complicated. It's really challenging. And I think we have to start with shared outcomes first, and then we can figure it out. But what we normally do is kind of worry about our fiefdom and what we're losing and who's getting what and titles. And we get wrapped up in all the minutia. And that's where I would love to see us somehow elevate, right? Elevate the discussion.
Yes, yes,
That's great.
absolutely. I think that's a great spot to end on, to really elevate that discussion and make sure that we look at it holistically for what's best for the company.
Yeah, awesome. Well, it was great being with you all. And thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Yes, thank you so much for sharing your insights, Anne. It was a pleasure meeting you and having you on the show today.
Yeah, this was a real treat. Thank you both. This was a lot of me listening to you guys go. It was such a great conversation. I really, this was, what a better way to spend my late morning. So thank you so much. And thanks everybody for joining us, and we'll talk to you again real soon.